Well, I had this idea to make a Christmas tree out of horseshoes, so I'm laying out the design here. And the horseshoes are pointed upwards because, like the old superstition, the luck will run out any other way. And who am I to go against tradition? Since these horseshoes were used on horses, and I like to use used horseshoes, if you've seen my other videos, they are not exactly perfect. So I have to start out by grinding the surface flat, the part that the horse walked on the ground with. And just because the idea here is to get it nice and clean and smooth, because later I'm going to bring it to a more of a polished look, not exactly a mirror finish, but pretty polished. And here I'm getting the edges clean. I started with the grinding wheel, did a 60 grit flap disc, and then I took it down to 120 grit flap disc, which you see here. And that takes it to a pretty decent finish, and that's the best grit I got for a flap disc. And then I went to an orbital sander after that for 220, and that takes the pattern down pretty smooth. I mean, it's not all the gouges are taken out, but that's okay. There's the 220 grit. The orbital sander, it's a little difficult on that surface to use, but it got the job done. I don't really have a belt sander. If I did, I probably would have used that instead. Then finally by hand, I used the 320 grit sanding block to kind of take it down as far as I could. And that's as far as I went. Like I said, I'm not trying to get a super finish on it. And that was a lot of work for all those horseshoes. Then I took it to the buffing wheel and used the black compound to start the buffing process on the hard wheel, and that smoothed out all the edges nice enough that there is some reflective surface there. And this is a high gloss compound that I had laying around and I never used before, and I think it had melted a little bit. That's why I was looking at it kind of strangely, but it still worked fine. Then I took it over to the welding table, or the pieces over to the welding table, and cleaned them off. Cleaned off the compound and tried to get everything lined up the way I wanted it. I mean, they're not lined up perfect, but hey, that's part of the charm. These are used horseshoes, and I wasn't taking a whole lot of time to square everything up. And I just did a bead on the adjoining pieces, the top and bottom, and then of course the horseshoes were pretty easy to weld. I didn't leave a huge bead, but the heat caused some bluing on the other side, like you see there. And I decided to leave that. I was going to buff it back out, or sand it back down and buff it back out, but I thought that it looked pretty cool, so I just left it in. I cleaned up where the welds were, and there's a good picture of it. So one side you can't see the welds, but you see the bluing, and the other side you actually see the bead, which isn't very big. For the base, I decided to use 3 horseshoes in this pattern, I don't know, triangular pattern, and just welded them together. And then I figured that would be enough surface to keep that from tipping over, or the tree from tipping over. And I used a horseshoe welded to the base for the trunk of the tree. I made sure the weld was filled in pretty good, so it was a nice sturdy base. Here I'm just getting a good angle so it lines up pretty straight. And then I'm going to weld the tree part to the base that I made. And I didn't do much prep work to the base because I'm going to paint it. The tree is going to remain shiny, but the base will be painted later. It stands up pretty good. So to kind of get the weld spots that kind of messed up the buffing, I decided to use my hard wheel on my drill, it just kind of cleaned those spots up. And then the soft wheel with the high gloss compound to finish it back to match, so I don't have dull spots and shiny spots. So for the base, I used this green that was part of another project, which I haven't posted the video yet, but that is the green moss color, and I like the color of it, the finish. I thought it was Christmassy. I had thought about doing another color, but this turned out okay for a Christmas tree. Then clear coat for the rest of it. Actually, I went over the green too, but just to protect it from rust or anything that you're going to put on there. Horseshoes turned into a Christmas tree. Thanks for joining me on this project. Please subscribe and like. And from my family to yours, Merry Christmas.